as humans, working in a small group seems to be one way we solve problems. So it just seems a natural environment to say, okay, here's some things you need to do. A lot of it's unfamiliar. A lot of students come from different backgrounds or different approaches, different experiences. It's a way to try and say, well, if you have some experience someone else may not have, maybe you can teach them. Well, my name is James Harland. I'm a lecturer in the Computer Science and Information Technology School here at RMIT. I've lectured a number of courses over the years, but the one I've done most work on recently is called Introduction to IT. Now that's a first semester course in the first year of our IT program, which is the largest program we teach. So it's a very broad mixture of students wanting to learn something about IT, and sometimes I've called this kind of course the Introduction to the Universe, because there's IT in everything if you look.
In the tutorials, we were subdivided into small groups that allowed us to communicate with each other, explain things to each other if we were a little unsure.
This is often their first experience of university, and it's often fairly frightening, fairly direct, fairly confronting for them.
At first it was kind of hard, but James was just very interesting. He explained everything really well.
So they go into their first tutorial, we say, all right, we often have to rearrange furniture, so sometimes you find that there's things laid out in rows that are not suitable for face-to-face communication. And I say, right, any questions about anything? And there's no such thing as a stupid one. 15 seconds of deathly silence, of course. I pull out a chocolate frog and then say, okay, now are there any questions? So I try to encourage the same thing in the tutorials by saying, okay, you play these games with names where you say, okay, for the first few minutes you have to throw a little ball or piece of paper around and say, name the person, throw the ball to them.
Very early on in the lecture, he just did the basic, look to your left, look to your right, get to know your neighbours sort of thing.
Sometimes we say things like, well, find the person in the room whose birthday is closest to yours.
That was like the keystone for the community, getting to know the people around you.
Well, you just play little things like that just to get them comfortable. And once they're like that, then the communication then follows. Well, I guess in terms of getting the students to relate to each other, part of the biggest issue is giving them something to talk about that's focused. So, for example, in some of the tutes, we give them an article taken from The Age or a newspaper or something like that that talks about an IT issue. So we say, read this article, and then saying, look, here's the IT issue, what do you think? So part of it's empowerment, part of it's also just linking to things that go on around the world.
We were asked at the end of each tutorial to give feedback marks. I believe this really helps.
There's a little bit of anxiety sometimes about, well, why should other students assess me?
It motivates people to participate, keep up to date and help others.
But again, if you say they're assessing your behaviour, your process, your interactions, your helpfulness, and for that matter, you're assessing theirs.
Well, we were also asked to make a mark on ourselves and evaluate how we interacted with the group.
As a group, we get to judge each other, and if there's someone slacking off, well, the group will pick that up.
It's just allowed everyone to improve their work and get more feedback on what they've done.
What we do see is a lot more student engagement. I think there's a number of reasons why a student would want to, in abstract at least, get involved in a group like this. A lot of feedback we get from employers is they say, if we get a graduate from RMIT, we assume they've got their technical knowledge. What we really want to know is, can they work in a team? So in some sense, it's the nature of the IT industry to have these sort of groups where you need to have both the technical skills, you can't ignore those, but they must be harnessed, if you like, to these other more, what some people might call social skills.
At the beginning of every lecture, we would watch a couple of minutes of one of many of the Lord of the Rings movies.
I guess it's become a bit of a habit with me now, but it seems a natural way to get people's attention.
Using Lord of the Rings and other sort of comics and everything like The Simpsons or Family Guy, it just made him more approachable.
But I think it's also a matter of conveying enthusiasm. If I'm enthusiastic about something, it's easy for that to rub off.
Like, we can go talk to him anytime. Instead of just being scared, oh, he's the lecturer, we shouldn't really go talk to him.
Another colleague of mine, for example, often gives students something that's a 1% bonus if they come to see him in the first couple of weeks. Just to say, get in the habit of doing this. If you feel comfortable in your particular tribe, you'll feel that, okay, within this particular process, then it's quite okay to go and knock on the lecturer's door, to ask them a question. Okay, just say hi as you're going in the lift and that sort of thing. Well, given they do this with typically the same group of 4 or 5 people each week, they do build some sort of rapport.
Building relationships with the students helps, because then you've got people you can ask for help if you're in trouble and you don't feel like you can go to a teacher about it.
Over the time, they get to share that experience of discussing questions, about talking to tutors, etc., and they build either friendships or at least working relationships between them.
If we've been able to help each other out, we've just been able to communicate together, and it's just become like close-knit sort of group. It's been good.
So I don't think it's about single community, it's about finding a place that you feel respected and involved.